We're going to start again and we'll get to your questions. So we're starting again. We're reading Chelik Beis Perek Lamed Gimel in the Moreh Nevuchim, where the Rambam starts off by saying that it's clear to him borally Mount Sinai loy kol ma shegiya leMoshe hu shegiya kula l'chol Yisrael. Not everything that came to Moshe is what came to Kol Yisrael, which on its face, which is I think over there, Barbanel reads it. This is a continuation of the Rambam's principle in 232, the previous chapter, that in order to achieve prophecy, one has to be worthy of it. So therefore, one cannot say that everyone achieved the same prophecy as Moshe did. But I would say further that this is not only about not everyone being worthy of prophecy, this is about the fact that not everyone is on the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. And specifically, the principle that not everyone is on the level of Moshe Rabbeinu has a specific tension when it comes to Mount Sinai. As I will show you, as is made clear in Chelik Aleph Perek Lamed Zayin, paragraph number 4. What was the level of Moshe Rabbeinu's nevuah? It's called Ponim El Ponim. Adibar Hashem Moshe Ponim El Ponim, Kasher Yadaber Ish El Re'ehu. Also called Pe El Pe Adaber Boy in Bahaloi, so they contrast Moshe to the other Nevi'im. Pe El Pe, Ponim El Ponim, the Rambam in Yisrael Torah Perek Vav seems to consider those the same thing, and they both mean that Hashem speaks to him without any intermediation of a malach. Okay, so now take a look at Aleph Lamed Zayin, paragraph number 4. The other Rambam says Panim means present, not face but present. And V'dibar Hashem Moshe Panim al Panim means present. One is present in front of the presence of the other, without any intermediation. And then he quotes the pasuk that says the same kind of level of interaction with Hashem about all of Bnei Yisrael, Panim b'Panim Dibar Hashem imach, and that takes us to Mount Sinai. And he elaborates and says, what does it mean that Hashem spoke to us, Panim b'Panim, as it says elsewhere, Kol devarim atem shomeim. So hearing a koil is called panim bepanim. Similarly, when it says about Moshe, v'dibar Hashem Moshe panim panim, it also involves hearing a koil, Hashem calling him directly, as the pasuk says, v'yishav as a koil midaber elav. So the Rambam concludes by saying what he's leading up to: his bar lecha imkein sheshmias hakoil b'li tivuch malach mechune panim bepanim. Hearing the koil of Hashem without the intermediation of a malach is called panim bepanim. So he ties it all together. Moshe hears Hashem panim panim. We heard Hashem panim panim, and that describes us hearing a koil. Similarly, we know Moshe heard Hashem's koil, so you see that Hashem calling someone by voice is called panim panim. So Pesach's question, right? You had a question, which is what does panim panim add to the fact that it was a voice, right? Okay. So the question is, if it's described as a voice, there's a voice. And the Rambam says in Chelik Aleph Perek Samachay, we'll get to that the voice is created. It doesn't mean the voice of God. How does God have a voice? It's something created. It's a thing that God makes. And that's what Moshe heard. That's what Bnei Yisrael heard at Sinai. So what is added by saying it's panim b'panim? That's the question. And we could ask the question in a different way, which is the way Rav Ben Aram asked the question in this week's parasha, Shmos Perek Yotes, Pasuk Yotes. He turns it around and says, in what sense do we say that Moshe speaks to Hashem directly, given that there was a voice? So he asks it that way. Why are we saying panim b'panim means face to face? Noichutz b'noichutz, beginning of the paragraph, the Rambam says, b'li tivuch. Rambam says, b'li tivuch. There's a little bit of a contradiction in that paragraph. Because in the beginning of the paragraph, in Aleph Lamed Zayin, paragraph number 4, the Rambam says they're face to face, b'li tivuch, without what does he have? Emtsai? Kappa. B'li emtsai. And then at the end of the paragraph, it says, b'li tivuch malach. Does he also have this? Malach. So what is it? Is it without an intermediary, or is it without the intermediation of a malach? So the answer is it's the chayr. If you'd ask me, well, if there's a voice, so okay, it's not an intermediation of a malach, but it's a different intermediation. It's an intermediation of a voice, and yet you say it's face to face, no intermediation. The Rambam himself says that in the beginning of the paragraph. It says no intermediation, but it is an intermediation. It's a malach. So that's why Rav Ben Aram asked that question. What does it mean that Hashem spoke to Moshe panim b'panim? Okay, and we could ask also, what does it mean Hashem spoke to us, panim b'panim? Same question. But I maintain that the Rambam that we're reading now, when he starts off the paragraph in this chapter and says, it's clear to me that in Mount Sinai, not everything that came to Moshe came to Klal Yisrael. He's not talking about the general problem that everyone is not worthy of being Nevi'im. He's talking about a much more specific problem. On the one hand, we know Moshe was unique in the fact that he spoke to Hashem panim b'panim. On the other hand, it says explicitly at Mount Sinai that Hashem spoke to us panim b'panim. That's a contradiction. So the answer has to be that the koil, which somehow is considered panim b'panim, a very important question, was experienced differently for us than it was for Moshe. And that's what this parak is about, the koil, But now remember, we're not talking about the koil of Subrakim and the koil of Shofar anymore. We're talking about the koil of Hashem. Okay, that doesn't say anything. We're talking about the koil that Moshe, that said Anochi and Lo Yelocha. The koil of Devarim, the koil that contained in it Devarim at least, and that koil had to have been different for Moshe and Gisol. It had to be so, because otherwise everyone is on not only a level of a Navi, which is the problem with the previous chapter, but they're on the level of Nevuas Moshe, and yet it says only Moshe was the one who merited for Hashem to speak to him upon.
When we say kol, just so do we mean a sound or do we mean a voice?
Voice.
Are they the same thing?
What do you mean by those? What's your distinction there?
A voice specifically talks. I think to me it means something that comes from I guess like a throat. Where does the voice come from?
Okay, a voice box, vocal cords, right?
The nafkamina could be Shmuel. Right? Shmuel hears a voice, but it's not a voice. Right? He's hearing a voice.
Why not?
He's hearing a voice in a chazon or in a mara or in a... Right?
Right, so what are you asking? That what? Whether it's a voice or a sound?
Or just a sound that communicates something.
Well, if it's a sound that has words...
Oh, you're saying the voice, we mean it has words?
I think so.
So that means, what do we know about this kol? We know that a kol is a sound that has words in it, that makes up words.
I mean, a kol devarim, you can have a kol shofar. So
yeah.
Kol itself doesn't mean...
Shofar is not articulate.
Right. Kol doesn't mean articulation. But kol devarim, the kol of devarim, which is what the pasuk calls it, means it's a sound that... forms words. But as the Ram is going to tell us, only Moshe was able to hear the words, and we didn't. Which Abarbanel asks, what are you talking about? If there's a sound, and how could there be a sound that some people could hear the words and other people can't?
I mean, we have it today. We have it with the frequency that means that we have it all the time. That's even.
What?
There's a high frequencies that we can't.
Oh, you mean we only heard it in a fuzzy way?
We heard the sound. We didn't
right.
hear.
But not close enough.
We didn't hear the.
Okay. Well, let's see. Okay, I hear that. I hear that. Okay, so let's read what the Rambam says. So I think that's what Rambam was doing over here. He's not talking about being Nevi'im. He's talking specifically about Moshe. That's why in the previous chapter he spoke about Moshe, Aaron, Shimon, Zakanim, and everyone according to the level. That's about Nevuah in general. This is about isolating Nevuah's Moshe from everyone else. Nevuah's Moshe, which is described as being put upon him. So you might think, we all were Nevi'im like Moshe, at least for a time. Says Rambam, not so.
Can I interject? Is it not also possible that he's talking about the fact that Moshe was Rabban Shakal Chachamim?
Okay.
And could be that the conclusions and understandings Moshe is able to draw from the same sound or the same stimuli is much greater than anything the rest of us got. Like call him a Gia.
I mean,
like why Dafka Nevuah is what I'm trying to understand. Especially if we're talking about a non-prophetic experience.
No, it is. It is prophetic experience.
The
no.
title is prophetic?
It's panim b'panim, di b'Hashem yimachem, yes. That's the problem. I think. That we're now onto a new thing. We're onto a new topic. We're not talking about the quasi-prophetic visions and hearings of the auditory sensations of the previous chapter. Now we're talking about the koil of Hashem, which is called panim b'panim, which is the exact same thing that Nevuas Moshe is called. So it's a much deeper problem.
I mean, the problem that I have with you insisting that this is a Nevuah is that, number one, we already established that this was an auditory phenomenon.
Okay.
And number two, the klal of the Rambam is right. And this is neither.
This is Nevuas Moshe. I know. That's the answer to both of your questions. This is Nevuas Moshe.
Right, but the rest of Klal Yisrael
also had Nevuas Moshe. They had panim b'panim. Look at Aleph Lamed Zayin. The Rambam says, speaking to Hashem through koil is considered without a tivach. It's called panim b'panim, and that's Moshe, and that's everyone by Sinai. So basically, I'm saying read this paragraph and contrast it with Aleph Lamed Zayin. You'll see he's saying the opposite, right? Because over there he basically lumps it all together, and here he's saying, okay, now let's look a little closer. In that same category, where in Aleph Lamed Zayin I said everyone's the same. Because Moshe had panim el panim, and we had panim el panim. Because Moshe heard a koil, and we heard a koil, and every time you hear a koil, it's called panim el panim. Here the Rambam's telling us we have to look closer and see that those two things are not identical. I'm only calling it Nevuah as in Nevuas Moshe, which the Rambam says Nevuas Moshe and Shah Nevi'im are share only a name, or it's a Lashon Mesopek, or it's a Lashon Meshutaf, there's different gears. Mm-hmm. But I'm saying that's the Rambam is going back to that point, that it seems like everyone at Har Sinai was doing the exact same thing that Moshe Rabbeinu did all the time. Vayish Masakol Medaber Elav, and that's how you'd read Aleph Lamed Zayin. And now we're going to look at that, take a closer look at that, and say not quite.
Why wouldn't the Rambam include this in the things that were experienced al derech hanes?
The koil?
Yeah.
Because it's panim b'panim.
So it's not al derech hanes?
Okay, so the question is like this.
Nobody ever got it like Moshe. No.
Right.
Now he's saying he did. Okay.
Right. No, so, right. Look, you could have a nace that a voice appears out of nowhere, right? Is that called Hashem speaking to you panim b'panim? So we have to understand why is Hashem's voice called speaking to you panim b'panim. Unless we have to understand the answer to Avram's question. But Pashtus, just the very fact that a voice appeared and started saying words is not called Hashem speaking to you panim b'panim. It's just the voice appeared miraculously and started saying things. Okay,
Right.
Okay. So the fact that it is called panim b'panim or panim el panim is reflective of something more than just saying a miraculous voice. Saying, oh, it was a miracle that a voice appeared. It doesn't solve anything because there's clearly something deeper that makes it panim b'panim, which is the hasaga. And the chayre, there has to, even with the Bavram, there has to be an element of hasaga. That, okay, Moshe was tuned in to Hashem's essence, and therefore maybe the koil was also there. That's the problem. Where's the koil fit into that whole structure? But the koil is not the whole story. To say, you know what, there was a koil. And if it is the whole story of Nevuas Moshe, then we have the same problem. Then we're all Nevi'im like Moshe. Right. So miracle doesn't solve anything over here. Okay, that's why there's a new problem that the Rambam's facing here. Ella hadibur ha'el Moshe levadoi. The speaking was to Moshe alone. All the speaking in the Eser Dibris is directed to an individual. In other words, look at the Eser Dibris. It says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, lo yiyeh lecha. It's a singular. Okay? There's a distinction between the first two and the other 8, which Abamanel talks about. The other 8, although they're in the singular, they're talking about Hashem in the third person. The first two Dibris are Hashem speaking in the first person to a second person singular. I am Hashem, your singular God. The third dibra is don't bear the name of Hashem, your God. Not don't bear my name. So it's a singular, but it's not Hashem speaking. Okay, so that may be that distinction. But either way, they're all speaking to a Yachid. Now, why is that significant? So Abamanel points out, because if you look in the context in Parshas Yisrei, Atem Re'isem Es Asher Asisim Mitzrayim, so it's plural. V'Yisem Li Segula, and then it shifts to the singular. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. In the flow of the parasha, you would have expected to continue in the plural. So then there's a shift. Why? Because these words are not the message of Hashem to Bnei Yisrael. These words, I mean, they are the message to Bnei Yisrael, but the way they're presented are how Hashem is telling them to Moshe, who's then going to tell them over to Klal Yisrael. Anochi Hashem Elokecha, that was said to Moshe, which by the way is a medrash, I think, by the Egel. Moshe argued. You said Anochi Hashem Elokecha. He said Lo yiyeh lecha. You never told them not to do it. Very interesting. What? Yeah. Very interesting, which, right. Okay, maybe something to think about here. V'hu olav hashalom yard l'tachte sahar v'hidia la'am mashahu shama. He went down to the people, to the bottom of the mountain, and told the people what he heard. Okay. Lashon HaTorah. So where do we see this in the pasuk? Anochi oimed Hashem, Anochi oimed bein Hashem u'beinechem lahagid lachem es dvar Hashem. So he was standing in between them and Hashem, and he brought them the word of Hashem. Moshe yidaber v'halikim yanen v'koil, which means, what does that mean? Moshe would speak, and Hashem would answer him. It means that Moshe was speaking, and Hashem was giving him the information that he would then say over. Also the lashon of the Torah that says, so that the people hear when I speak to you. So what does the pasuk say? I'm going to come to you in the cloud, so that they hear when I'm speaking to you. It's mashma that they're overhearing, but the speech is to you. Now the Rambam gives a little detail. Here it says, they'll overhear that I'm speaking to you. So that means, says the Rambam, that they're going to hear that I'm speaking to you, but they're not going to hear the content. So they're hearing the koil, the sound. Doesn't say you heard words. It says you heard the sound of words. Whenever it talks about hearing dibur, hakavana hi rak shmias hakoil, The only thing they heard was the shmiya of the koil. U'Moshe u'sheshamas hadavarim. So they heard the sound or the voice, and Moshe heard the words. U'masa yisam lehem zeh ma shenir melashon haTorah moed v'chomza. Okay, so the Abarbanel asks two questions. One I mentioned before. He says, how do some people, if there's a voice that's created, let's look up that passage where the Rambam says it's created. That's in Aleph Samech Hey, just so everyone knows that in front of them. In Aleph Samech Hey, the Rambam tells us that the voice is a created voice. Correct the Abarbanel, so it's a miraculous thing, it's created. And how is it that Moshe could hear the words, but everyone else just hears the sound? How does that happen? Aleph Samech Hey, the Rambam says, in that parak, the Rambam talks about what the meaning of Vayomer is, or Dibor, when it applies to God. And he says the following in the beginning of the parak. There's a consensus in our nation that the Torah is created. The meaning of that is Shehadibur hamiyuchas loy nivra. Then when we talk about attributing speech to Hashem, that's created. V'hu yuchas loy. In what sense is it Hashem's voice? Rak mishum she'oisek kol sheshama Moshe Hashem b'ra'oi v'chidshoy kefi shebar kol mashabar v'chidesh. You know what it means? That's the voice of Hashem. It's Hashem's because He created it. That's what it means. It's the voice of Hashem. It's His. Like everything is His.
This makes Rambam's question stronger.
Right. It's Pashut He created something, and it's Kol Hashem because He created it. And it's only called Kol Hashem. It's only attributed to Him because Hashem created it. So the Kol is created. It's a thing that exists in this world, and Frek Barbanel. So how is it that someone could hear the sound, the words, and someone else cannot? And secondly, Frek Barbanel, what's the big deal about hearing that Kol? It's just like another Kol Shofar or Kol Barakim. Why is it so significant? Barbanel asks.
Can I ask? Well,
Yeah, you can ask whatever you want.
Clarification. So
Sure.
back in Lamed Gimel it says, "Omar kol dvarim atam shemin." Okay, a voice of words.
Right.
And then later on it says, "Kan inkon elashmias kol," and Moshe hears the words.
Mm-hmm.
So what does it mean kol dvarim? Does that mean we heard a sound and it was clear from the sound we heard that they were words we did not understand?
I don't know about that. No, the sound of the words. You heard the sound of the words. You may have not known that it was the sound
Right,
of
so
words.
we may not have even known that they were words necessarily being uttered.
Correct.
We didn't recognize it as speech, let's say.
That could be. Although it does say Bavor Yishma Asam Medabri Imach.
Yeah,
But that might not mean that they heard that I was speaking to you. They'll hear while I'm speaking to you. They'll hear it.
So now
They'll hear a murmur.
Right.
They might not know that it's speech.
So to put in the frame of the Barbanel's conscience, the Barbanel is also asking, how can it be that people didn't even know that words were being said?
No, that's not what he's asking, because he's not assuming they didn't know that words were being said. He's just asking that what would prevent them from hearing the words if there are words there. Why would they not hear it, and why would Moshe hear it? What would it take? In other words, the Bible is looking at it like a miraculous thing that's created. So what would it take for one person to hear it and not for another? Okay, you could say, by the way, you could say it's closer.
Like you hear sound, you have no idea what's being said.
Yeah, listen, look, you could just say, okay, so you might as well say, look, it was faint. Moshe was on top of the mountain, and from that distance, the coil was, let's say, right on the top.
What he's asking. What's he really asking? Is he asking a question about mechanics, or is he asking?
Why? Because that you can answer. You're saying.
Yeah, like
okay.
it doesn't seem to be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I guess his question is, what's the significance? A deeper way. I mean, if the answer is mechanical, then who cares?
Right.
And the only answer we can fathom is mechanics. That's sort of what he's asking, right? Yes, you give a mechanical answer. Moshe was closer to the koil. Okay, so big deal. So why is Rambam insisting, it was fundamentally different? It wasn't fundamentally different. Just Moshe could make it out, and they couldn't. But so the two questions that he asked go together. There's other questions. What's the big deal about this koil? It's a created thing, and you could hear it. If you're close enough, you could hear it. Okay, you weren't close enough, so you couldn't hear it, let's say. But that's not interesting.
Right,
the whole thing is not interesting.
Right. If you take out the mechanic, let's say that was everything was equal, and it's a regular recreated voice.
Yeah, it's a miracle.
Why would he or not hear it? It's not,
right, right, and you say exactly, and you maybe like I was saying, you could find an answer for that mechanically, but it's not. There's no reason for that. There's no meaning in that. That would make it significant. Okay, so let's go like this. I just want to structure the parak. We're going to read the whole thing to the end, and then we'll talk about all the points over here. But what the Rambam does, if you went through the paragraph, in paragraph number 1, he starts talking about the koil and says they didn't hear the content, they just heard the sound. Paragraph number 2, he talks about a hasaga, that they were masig anochi and lo yelecha, and he says that's a purely intellectual hasaga. That's what seems in paragraph number 2. Paragraph number 3, then he goes back to the koil, and he combines the koil with the hasaga, and he says that the koil that they heard was the koil of anochi and lo yelecha. I'm just trying to make a little seder out of the parak, which is not clear. There's other ways to read this. Is the Rambam changing his mind? Is he making a consensus? He's saying tudum pratum. I'm reading it for now. Then you need it. The Rambam is putting it all together, and he's just structuring it like this. He says, first I'm going to talk to you about the koil. Then I'm going to talk to you about a Maimon Chazal where they talk about anochi and lo yelecha, and that koil is not words. It's no content. It's just sound. Then I'm going to talk to you about content, intellectual content, anochi and lo yelecha, and I'm going to tell you that was a hasaga, something that they understood intellectually. And then I'm going to tell you, but the truth is that if you look at Chazal, the hasaga and the koil do have a connection, and there I'm going to explain that they were masig anochi and lo yelecha from the koil. How does that happen?
They didn't need Moshe in the first two.
Let's see. Rama will explain that, but I just want to give you the structure. Well, the Rama will talk. Let the Rama talk now. Ela sheyesh lam gam meimur mefureshes. In other words, till now I just said that everything is about sound without content, but the truth is, again, I'm saying it's not a. Rambam is continuing. He's not contrasting or saying a machlekes. Could be read differently, but that's how I want to read it for now. There's a member for Reshes, but Kama becomes bimidrashes. V'hinimtis gam betalmud. Okay, why is that important? V'hu devreim anochi l'yelchem b'pi ha'gvura shamom. So what does that mean? Does that mean that sounds like the content? Says the Rambam. Here's what it means. Kavanosam hi shehim higiu aleim k'moshe higiu l'Moshe Rabbeinu. They reached these. These commandments reached them. These commandments reached to them, the people, just like the same commandments reached to Moshe Rabbeinu. V'lo Moshe Rabbeinu hever oisei aleim. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't bring them to them. Ki shnei ha'ikarim ha'eleh. These two principles, which are kiyam ha'eloika v'yosei echad, the existence of God and the fact that He's one, nitanim al-hasaga be'iyun anushi. That can be perceived through human reason. Without revelation. Anything that can be derived through proof. Din hanavi legabav gedin kol misha lomad oisai. Prophet, relative to that fact, is the same as anyone else who studied it. Ve'ein bar yisron le'echad ala acher. There's no mile of the prophet over me. So the prophet knows 2 + 2 = 4. I also know that. It's nothing. He doesn't have any more knowledge content about that particular fact that I can prove than I do through my proof. So that's what it means in Pia Gvura Shmamom. It means that they both had them directly from God because there was no need for it to be revealed. That seems to be what he's saying.
Does it happen now, or this could have happened at any point?
Oh, very good. Let's see. These two principles are not only don't require merely revelation. You came to know. So you came to know what? That's something that you were brought to know. No, knowledge. I guess he's saying not revelation, but knowledge. Maybe that's what he's like. I don't know.
Isn't that statement supporting the premise that this was not nevuah?
Yeah, not nevuah. It was simply hasaga. Simply hasaga. So what the Rambam seems to be saying over here is that at the time of Har Sinai, the people were taught about the existence of God. They got to a point, maybe Moshe was trading them from when they left Mitzrayim, probably, started with Mashemai, the revelation, and he was trading them to understand the concept of Hashem. They reached a point that they were Masig Hashem. He taught them Chelik Beis, the proofs, the beginning of Chelik Beis, and they knew the Mitzvah is Hashem and that Hashem is one. And so they had it the same as Moshe did. Water, please.
So
he had the same as Moshe.
Is he simultaneously saying that they understood this through rational, logical understanding?
Yeah.
But also this Mipia Gvura concept of that in some way, shape, or form is like it comes to us and Moshe the same way.
Right.
Which seems
is it Mipia Gvura? What does he mean? Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, it's interesting. Right. In other words, the Rambam, I think what you're getting at is Rambam says, okay, what does it mean Mipia Gvura? It means that it came to us and Moshe in the same way. Okay. okay, well, that's not what Piyag Gvura means. That's just something else means. The Piyag Gvura is not saying that it was the same as Moshe. It's saying something about how it came to us. The Rambam is explaining the fact that the Gemara says something about how it came to us by saying it came to us in the same way that it came to Moshe. It's a little bit roundabout, not really getting to the point of why we're calling this Piyag Gvura.
Right.
In other words, if the Rambam would say Iyun Hanushi is called Piyag Gvura because Seichel is godly and so on and so forth, fine. The Rambam could have said that. He didn't say that. He says the Gemara means that it came to us in the same way it came to Moshe. That's not hitting the point, which is why we're calling this Piyag Gvura. So that's a very interesting question, which I'm not going to talk about. I don't have anything. We'll leave that. It's a very interesting thing. We should get back to that. V'ilu shar hadibas. Here's another thing we want to get back to. V'ilu shar hadibas hein v'min ha'fursamus ha'mukubalas lo v'min ha'muskalas. Very important statement that there's this different kinds of truth knowledge about things. You could have these 4 categories: muskalas b'fursamus ha'mukubalas ha'muchashes, and the other dibras are b'fursamus ha'mukubalas. We're not going to get into that, even though it's very important. Hopefully, we'll get back to it. So far, the Rambam said, paragraph number 1, he said, sound. Okay. Paragraph number 2, Anochi L'Yelecha, yeah, that's Iyun. Now, the Rambam is going to combine the two. Yachin Advar Ma'ila Sha'amru, together with this, Hini Masha is Baran by Apsukim Devei Chachamim, what comes out from the Psukim and Chazal, Kol Yisrael L'Shambu B'maymin Hazeh Ela Kol Echad Bilvad Pamachas. They only heard one sound. For some reason, it's very important to the Rambam that they only heard the koil once. The Babbanel asks this question also. He says, why did they have to only hear once? You can hear once, you can hear twice. Why is it so important to the Rambam that it was only once? The Rambam repeats this again and again. Only once. V'hu, ha-koil, now listen to the statement. The koil that they heard once is the sound, or the voice, Shem Moshe v'chol Yisrael isigu mimenu as anochi v'liyelecha. Moshe and Kol Yisrael were masig from a koil. Anochi v'liyelecha. Now, how were they masig from the koil if they didn't hear the words? Because then he continues and says, Moshe then came back to them and said, here, you know what you just heard? But even though they didn't hear, they didn't discern those words, they just heard the sound of those words, yet the Rambam calls that hasaga. They were masig from a voice, so they heard a hum. They didn't know what the content was in terms of its words, and it wasn't articulated as words, and yet the Rambam says that they perceived from that voice. Doesn't make any sense, but that's why now you understand why I see the structure of this parak is, okay, sound, hasaga, but actually the hasaga was from the sound, even though it was just sound, until Moshe came and explained to them it was only sound, but it was a sound from which they were masig on Eichel Yelecha. Those are the words of the Rambam.
After Moshe explained it.
No, doesn't say that. I don't think so.
It says Vishmi Moshe said milim.
Yeah.
Meaning Moshe said, that noise you just heard, let me tell you what it means.
Right.
It means
Right.
So they heard the data, and Moshe translated the data into meaning for them.
But he says isigu mimenu as Eichel Yelecha, which means to perceive, apprehended. Adrach, whatever the Arabic word is, it means to be masig. Right? They have probably has asigu, right? Kappa probably has asigu, no?
Yes.
Asigu, it's the same word. It's the right word. It means to be masig, like we say, to be masig, to perceive. What does penis translate? Can we look at the English? But they say probably perceive or apprehend.
Hold on. So it says
it's,
here.
Let's let her in English.
Yes. I hear what you're saying. You're saying that before Moshe even said the words, they understood the concept
from it. From it, yeah. He's not just saying, "Oh, it was the voice that they found out later." By the way, that hum you just heard, you know what it was saying. Well, let's get the English. You found it?
But these two principles, I mean, the existence.
No, a little further.
The idea is being born, our knowledge about human.
Go. Skip ahead.
Now, with regard to everything that can be. Known by demonstration, the status of the prophet.
No. Weiter.
Those two principles are not known through prophecy alone. The Torah says unto thee. The class of
Keep going. Jump ahead.
Taking into consideration whatever else they said.
This is what we need. Yes.
The texts are the dicta of the sages, permit considering as admissible that all Israel heard at the gathering one voice, one single time. The voice through
slow down. This is what we need.
And all Israel apprehended. I and thou shalt not have, which commandments Moses made them hear again,
right?
As
and again,
to his own speech.
He adds the word again. But yeah, right. But they apprehended right. But they apprehended on apprehension, hasaga.
So Moshe
They were massing on
this edition of the same commandment. I mean, what was he adding when he said Vishmiyam, the words that Moshe heard? He said, Chavra, I know everybody understood what just happened. But let me tell you what Hashem said exactly.
So that's a very interesting question. I don't know, but there's another funny thing over here because look what he says. Let's read the Kapach translation. What did Moshe give to them? What did Moshe tell them? Moshe, read that.
Hold on. Vishmiyam Moshe zebemilim b'chituch oisiyos hanishmois.
So what do you mean hanishmois?
So
everything was nishmois.
That he heard.
No. They say hanitnu l'shmiya. Hanishmois that can be heard.
They reached it through intellect.
No, but it was through a coil. But the Rambam says it was a coil.
It's a coil, good. But
So where does the intellect and the coil come together?
It triggered an intellect.
Very good.
Intellect
Exactly.
But then Moshe actually said that.
Correct.
Explained it in the sound.
That's what I believe the Rambam is saying. Correct. There is a coil, and there's an intellectual apprehension that somehow is linked to that coil. Rambam doesn't explain how. Maybe it triggered an intellectual perception. You could say it that way. So they had a perception. The content of the perception is there's one God. Everyone would have said that in his own words. If you would ask them, okay, what did you just perceive? One would have said it this, one would have said that. Moshe came and said, I'm going to give it to you the bidiyuk, the exact way to say it, because I actually heard the words of the koil, and that's a neichel yelcha. So that's what I think the Rambam is saying. So that's why I say he's combining the hasaga and the koil in this paragraph, that there was a koil, paragraph number 1. There was a hasaga, paragraph number 2, and paragraph number 2 tells us that the hasaga was from the koil, which, where the words come in, that Moshe did. And by the way, I'm not answering that question of why he stresses words that are able to be heard, because the koil was heard, unless he means the hasaga wasn't heard. Maybe that's what he means. There's a hasaga going on. So what I'm reading is like this. There's a hasaga going on from the perspective of Bnei Yisrael. There's a hasaga going on, and there's an unarticulated koil going on. And then there's a third thing, which is Moshe comes and gives them words. So words, when the Rambam says words that are nitn l'shmiya, he means to say, perhaps he's stressing that now they got the hasaga in an auditory way, while prior to this they had the hasaga, which was intellectual, somehow simultaneous with an auditory perception, which was not a hasaga.
Saying like a pre-language understanding almost.
Yeah, something like that, right?
So
And that, yeah.
when he says the Chacham were masking.
What?
Oh,
So again, the Rambam is stressing that it was only one koil, and Shtayim Zu Shamanu means that from that koil they perceived two things, both Anochi and Le'ilcha.
it's still Lashon Shmiya there.
Right.
He says
Right.
Shemiya as a
Interesting.
Who talks about is a
Interesting. Okay, so does this Shemiya mean something different than the Rambam Shemiya 2 lines prior? Okay, that's interesting. Right. In other words, he stresses that the Shemiya happened afterwards, and here he says the Shemiya happened at the time. Okay, that's a very interesting thing. I want to try to overview. There's a lot of small points here which probably are tremendous, and hopefully we'll get back to them. Next paragraph. Okay, so again, the Rambam stresses that it's one koil, and what we're left with the question over here is where does a hasaga and the koil interact? Again, only once. Again. And this word is koil. Either it's Arabic, which means dibur, or it's koil in Hebrew. That's when what happened. The following happened. So this is a little bit of a clue why the Rambam is so insistent that it only happened once, because they couldn't take it. So of course, how could it happen again? It's quite connected. The Azhu, and then he, Moshe Rabbeinu. Hanichbad mikol yulud isha. What's the kapach here?
Hamiram mikol yulud.
Okay, exalted from any person that was born from a woman. So why does Rambam say this? Because Moshe Rabbeinu went ahead and did something that no human being was willing to do. And all of a sudden he is doing it. They're afraid to die. And he's not afraid to die. Why is he not afraid to die? Because he's superhuman. Superhuman is Rambam words. He says he was greater than anyone born from a woman, or than anyone born. It means he wasn't born.
I was about to ask, does that mean that he was the greatest of a class? Or
No.
He's not a part of that class.
Not part of that class. He's greater than everyone that was born. He's not the greatest one who was born. He's greater than everyone was born.
So what is he?
He's a soul.
And I think you say that Torah, right?
Avodah, no? Avodah, Pergal.
Yeah, Avodah, excuse me, Avodah. Yes.
Hashem made Moshe
And I
Rabbeinu.
think that's a pasuk in
Shmuel.
in Shmuel or Melachim.
Yeah. What is he?
It's just a
So what is he? He's just neshama. He's neshama. Okay? He's neshama. That's why he's not afraid to die, because if you're neshama, then you're dead. Death is very important in this parak, right? The Rambam is going to quote soon. that Yatsa Nishmasan Bedabre. Yatsa Nishmasan means you're there's a complete, what's Yatsa Nishmasan? Yatsa Nishmasan means there's a complete severance between your mind, which is the soul, let's say, call it the mind, and your body. Okay? It means to say what's going to happen to your body if your mind is completely severed from your body. You won't breathe. Right? Your heart won't pump. You certainly won't eat, probably. Okay, but Moshe Rabbeinu, is Superman, superhuman, and therefore he does something that nobody can do and live. It means he's not living either, not living in the usual sense, as we shall see. Nigash Shenis, V'kibel Ashar Debes Achas Achas. He could do it one at a time. He could consistently interact with the coil, despite the death that's associated with that. At the same time, the rest of the 8 dibros, there's still the other things happening. Which is an ongoing throughout Matan Torah. There were koiles, Hashem. Now the Ram tells us what the koil is finally. HaKoil HaNivra Shemimenu Huvan HaDibur to Moshe. Heim lo yisham muvad pam achas bilvad. K'moshe Amar Torah. K'moshe B'yacham b'makom she'arti l'cha Allah. V'hu HaKoil HaShiyatz Nishmasan b'sham oi. Which is why it can only be once. V'sigu boy ashtei hadibur. Again he says, V'sigu boy. In that koil they were masik. Again he repeats that, which tells us that there was a hasaga. Hasaga associated with the koil. V'dar shegam b'koil zeh. Ein dargosam shavel dargos Moshe Rabbeinu. So he's adding something. And this is again the Barbanel points out. We know that they didn't hear the words. That Ram already said. They didn't hear the words and he heard the words. But there was a hasaga, something. And Ram also told us earlier that made the point that everyone is equivalent to Moshe Rabbeinu regarding Anochi Li Elecha. So now he's qualifying that and saying that there's another distinction regarding this koil between them and Moshe. Okay.
Sorry, the koil is the sound or the hasaga? Right now, when he's talking about the koil resulting in different dargos, the sound itself was heard differently.
Let's see. Well, he'll tell us. He's going to ma'or this side. Why is it important? I don't know. Another very important thing, which we should pick one of these things and drill into them next year. That the Rambam says that I'm going to tell you a side, and I'm also going to tell you that it's mekubal in the Ummah, b'Mesiris, and known to its Chachamim, which we'll see how he tells us that. Why is he stressing that? Okay, but what's the side? Which is Hashem speaking to Moshe. They didn't say Hashem shouldn't speak to us. They said it shouldn't be spoken to us from before Hashem. So what do you see? Aside. You see that the darga is not shava in the koil, and the difference in the madrega is that for Moshe it's Hashem speaking to Moshe. For us it's a voice from before Hashem speaking to us. Okay? It's being spoken to us from before Hashem. So there's a level of intermediation, right? Which goes against the pasuk of panim bepanim. Essentially, what the Rambam is doing over here, he's qualifying panim bepanim, even though it's called panim bepanim, but Targum says it wasn't Hashem speaking to us, it was being spoken to us from before Hashem. Moshe is called Hashem speaking to us. Well, if Hashem makes a koil and the koil speaks to you, is that Hashem speaking to you? Or is that you're being spoken to from something that Hashem created? That to me is what this tracks on. The question we started with, which is, we have to get back to that, that's the big question here. In what sense is Hashem speaking to Moshe when there's a koil? I wouldn't say it's Hashem speaking to him, I would say it's being spoken to you from before Hashem. Okay, that's what they called it. Hashem created a voice, and the voice spoke to them. And they call that then being spoken to us from before Hashem, which is more accurate. But Moshe calls it Hashem, for Moshe it's called Hashem speaking to him. And I'm telling you that's I'm suggesting that's panim bepanim is malal Hashem, and malal imana min kodem Hashem is basically denying the fact that it was panim bepanim. Well, but that's a contradicts the pasuk that says it was panim bepanim. So we have a problem here. But the Rambam over here is telling us that whatever did happen in this koil. So I'm reading this whole parak batzim about panim bepanim, about the stira, about panim bepanim for us, and only Moshe was panim bepanim. And the Rambam starts with the parak and says, here's one difference, that it was koil as opposed to dibur. And then, like we said, then he ties the hasagat back to that. And now he says you should know also, even in that koil, without the dibur, for us it's not panim bepanim. It's from the lefnei Hashem. Okay, we have to explain this. The pasuk says it was panim bepanim.
So I'm just talking about lefnei. Is it a time thing?
No, in the present, spatial.
But then that means he's limiting God to a specific space.
No. Okay, so anytime we say something is lefnei Hashem, what does that mean? It means it's in the presence of God. So what does that mean in the presence of God? We have to look at the chapter about panim.
Yeah, I'm saying I would have typed the same thing as panim. So how would you differentiate panim and lefnei?
I see. Okay, no. The point is like this. I see what you're saying. Okay, fine. Because Yismalel imana min koda means, you see, it means it should not be spoken to us from before Hashem. So we're using a passive voice, being spoken to us from before Hashem. We're not calling it Hashem speaking. Forget about the lefnei. You don't have to even stress about that. That's not. That's one aspect to stress in the Targum. But we don't have to focus on that nekuda. Targum says, "V'lo yismalel imana min kodem Hashem." So instead of saying Hashem speaking to us, Hashem should not speak to us, he says it should not be spoken to us from the presence of Hashem. So let's even talk about the first part.
And a degree of separation.
It's a degree of separation, that's all, right. And also from the presence, also a degree of separation. Okay, so yeah, it gets confusing because the panim. So forget about that. Just even the fact that it says it should not be spoken to us, instead of saying Hashem should not speak to us, implies that Hashem never spoke to us. So that's what I'm telling us, that you should know Hashem never spoke to us.
And it's not,
in the same way.
It's not good enough to just say that the Rambam is explaining that the panim and panim is two different dargahs.
Okay, that's what he's saying, right? But what is that? Fine, but yeah, but
I thought you were rejecting that as a possibility, that you're saying either it's both panim and panim or we're not panim and panim.
no, okay. To me, this means it's not panim and panim. If it's not called Hashem speaking to us, but rather being spoken to us from before Hashem, sounds like it's not panim and panim. Sounds like it's not.
But before the Rambam said panim and panim just means, I think Mount Sinai.
Yeah.
It just means there's no tes malach.
Correct.
So that doesn't mean that there can be different levels of hasaga from the same.
Okay, so what are those levels? Fine, what are those levels? What are those levels? And you have to understand also, when Hashem's not speaking to me or doing anything to me, is also not B'layim Tzavos Malach. It's not called Panim Panim. We have to figure out the positive aspect that makes it Panim Panim.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah. Of course.
Good, let's finish this. Okay, I don't know what that means. I gave you more detail. Ram gave us less detail because he said nothing. He said, I'll just tell you the site. He wasn't mefar at the klal. He just said, I'm going on the site. Okay, that's interesting. That's very interesting. And there he goes back. He said, I'm not only going to tell you about the site, but I'm also going to teach you that it was mekubal and known to the chachamim. Why? It's not Uncle's own chidushim. Uncle's mekabelet from the nefloim, these nefloim and nechbanim from Elazar and Yeshua, who are chacham Yisrael stam as Aishdin Yishalmi. So you see that it was mekubal and it was known to the chachamim. Okay, why is this important to the Rambam? I don't know. Da zois imkim v'zachrehu ki ein efshar says amik ma'im v'nasini yezim amid azay shem iskiru. We can't go deeper into ma'im v'nasini ki umachlas as a Torah. V'amitas asar gazayis v'oifrin shalom estom mitonah ma'oid. Why is it so nister? Why is it so hidden? Ki lo haisel lefanei kamoya v'lo yisiya achareha, because it never happened before and never will happen again. Right? How does I know it won't happen again? It's a good question. Dazes imkain. So why is it so hard to understand Ma'im Sinai, to understand the nature of this communication? Because it never happened again. And the point is that we have nothing to compare it to, which I want to draw a parallel to the Rambam says about Moshe Rabbeinu in the 8th principle, in the 13 principles. He says that nobody knows the nature of how the word of Hashem came to Moshe except for him, to whom it came. So what he's saying is essentially the same thing. That something which is not common and you have nothing to compare it to cannot be fully explained. Only Moshe, who constantly had this hasaga, he could explain it. Okay, but we What did we have, right? Okay, what did we have? Now, we today in the Rambam and talking to us, okay, it never repeated itself, right? What about the people at Mount Sinai? Notice the Rambam says in the one I just read that only Moshe Rabbeinu knew the nature of it. So just another way of restating the question, what happened to everyone else who also had upon him at Mount Sinai? Did they know the nature of what just happened? I guess you could ask that. Did they know what just happened? Did they know what just hit him? Okay, they're just throwing in another question. But the questions we had on the parak are, let's see, what do we have to understand? Basically, how is there a hasaga that relates to a koil? What is the relationship? What is the nature of the relationship between the hasaga and the koil? And what is the kind of panim upon that Moshe had as opposed to the one that they had? Okay, we're good. We're ready for some big stuff. Okay, so let me tell you. I won't tell you. I'll tell you the question. Ram asked the question we mentioned before. How could we call Moshe Rabbeinu's communication with Hashem panim bepanim, given that you're coming back soon, right?
No.
Oh, that's given that it was intermediated with a right. This is in Shmois Yutes Ayin Sham. He has Narichs Gedola after apologizing for talking about something which is we have a right to talk about. So I guess we have to do the same apologies, and I'm not sure what our heter is, but okay. But no, I don't know. No, it's like maybe we're not supposed to talk about this. I don't know. But I want to do like this. I want to tell you something which is prima facie, not like a Rambam and a Rambam. This is my understanding of it in the Das Rambam. But notice the Rambam makes this point in Aleph Lamed Zayin. He says, when there's no intermediation of a malach, it's called pana pana. There's a chiddush there, obviously, because there is intermediation, right? As we discussed. So take a look at Aleph Chof Aleph, yes, Aleph Chof Aleph, paragraphs number 7 and 8. There the Rambam explains that when Moshe Rabbeinu asked Hashem to see him, he asked for something called Ri'as Ponim, and he didn't attain Ri'as Ponim. Instead, he was given something called seeing Hashem's Ochor, seeing Hashem's back. Okay? So instead of having Ri'as Panim, he had Ri'as Ochor. Hashem hid from him Ri'as Panim and gave him instead Ri'as Ochor. What does it mean Hashem hid from him? So this is paragraph number 8 in the Mifam Shter edition. What do I mean, says the Rambam, when I say Hashem hid this from him? Kavanasi shehasaga hazu hi musteres umenu'ah mitiv'ah. I don't mean that there was an intervention to hide it. I mean it's impossible to know this. V'shekol adam shalem, any perfect man, kasher sichlo niksha b'davar shetivur lahasig, when he knows what it is in his nature to know, v'yishav lahasaga noisefes me'ever lakach, and he seeks to know something beyond his nature, alula hasagas elishtabesh o sheyamos, he's likely to confuse himself or die. I think there's a different translation there. Maybe the sheyamos. Okay, no, okay. Kifisha yivur miperek mipirkei chibur. We're going to learn later about the 4 people that went into Merkava and hitzitz v'nifga or hitzitz v'meis, and only Rabbi Akiva z'nichas b'shalom yatz b'shalom. We'll see why soon. So that's what Moshe Rabbeinu was hidden from Moshe Rabbeinu. Elam yinlavav siyu elaki. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu lose his mind or die? How did he come back and tell the tale? If he tried to know something he couldn't know. There was a divine protection. It was a divine protection that Moshe Rabbeinu should not die and should not lose his mind, should not suffer the fate of Ben Azzai and Ben Zoma. So we have Ben Azzai, Ben Zoma, we have Moshe Rabbeinu, and of course we have Rabbi Akiva, who's B'Shalom Yotze B'Shalom. What did Rabbi Akiva do? Okay, everyone, did I move too fast there with that move? You see how? Okay, because the Rambam says, I'm going to tell you one of the Prakim of the Akiva. Let's go to Chelik Aleph Perek Lamed Beis, and we'll learn what Rabbi Akiva did when he was thinking about being Masig Hashem. Let's read paragraph number 2 in Perek Lamed Beis. Paragraph number 1 says that human intellect has limits, and there's only so much that a person has within his nature to know, just like there's only so much that a person has within his nature to see, or all the other bodily faculties. Because intellect is also connected to the body, therefore it has limits. Important to know that. So paragraph number 2 says, if you stop at a place of doubt, don't confuse yourself, don't trick yourself into thinking that there is a proof for something that wasn't actually proven. Nor will you quickly reject something that hasn't been disproven. Don't try to know that which you cannot know. So you know what it means to be a perfect man? It means to know your limits. And then you're perfect, and you're bedagas bekiva. So how is it bekiva? Because he said, when you see the anishai shtar, don't say mayim, which I'm saying means, don't jump to conclusions, and don't try to know something that you can't know. Just accept epistemological humility. There are things we can't know. So, and that made him a perfect man. It was nichas b'shalom. Now, that's not what Moshe Rabbeinu did. He did something that should have harmed him, and makes him an imperfect man. Because Rambam says here again, you know what Shleimus Anushis is defined? Shleimus Anushis is defined by not going past your limits. With Rambam Perek Aleph, he says, an Adam Sholem who knows what his nature is to know and then wants more. What does he want? What do you mean he wants more? He wants to be more than an Adam Sholem. What does that mean? How could you be more than an Adam Sholem? Adam Sholem is not like just a nice word. It's a technical term. It means you have perfected what is within human nature to perfect, which means not just doing everything a human could do, but also understanding that there are things that a human cannot do, because you have to honor your humanness, or else you're likely to never come back, or to just be mishabish your mind. So Moshe Rabbeinu is not honoring his humanness. An Adam Shalom who wants more wants to be superhuman, and it's not a big deal to be superhuman. You can do it. You can die. You can cross over. Because remember what the Rambam says. The Rambam starts his parak Lam Vezi. He says because intellectual hasag is connected to the body, therefore it has limits. But guess what? We have something. We have a fix for that. It's called suicide or whatever. Basically, contemplating God till your body is in a way that it has nothing to do with your body, and your intellect is severed from your body. Yeah? No?
No, I'm trying to figure out
What?
I'm trying to figure out Elisha ben Avuya now.
Keats has been a Tias. We forgot about him, right?
Yeah, but did he?
No, so him, the Rambam says, it's like Shama. No, his problem was like Shama. How did he make that? Where did he get to that problem? Okay, that's interesting. Right,
Did
because
he go past what he was supposed to?
that's a very interesting. Right,
Did
there's
he
another
know his
category.
limit and just mess it up?
Yeah, there's another category here. Right, another in Aleph Kafal. Rambam says you're liable to either die or be nifka. That's ben Zoma ben Azzai, or you have to be protected. That's Moshe Rabbeinu, and then there's Rabbi Akiva who never even ventured because he was too smart to do that. And then there's Elisha, right? And there's Elisha, right?
Is Acher what happens if you go too far and don't have the special protection?
No, because then you'd be Mesa Nifka. That's Mesa Nifka.
That's
Yeah, Mesa Nifka. So what is that? Ben Acher? What's Ben Acher? What is Elisha ben Avuya?
definitely something to think about.
Yeah, something to think about. He had a different problem. I'm in these programs sort of alludes to it.
Opposite Rabbi Akiva that he didn't understand his limits.
Right?
As opposed
He's
to
saying that's
No, so why would he be Mesa Nifka? Why is he not Mesa Nifka? Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. No, here's the thing, because I think Acher thinks that the limits of the human intellect, which are connected to matter, are the limits of knowledge. Because Acher's problem was Hakshama, Rambam says. Rambam alludes to.
So he gets stuck at a wrong limit.
What?
He made a mistake with the limits were.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah, well, he thinks that anything that's limiting him, because he's a body, is the limit of God. That's Shtei Rishuyas. That's Shtei Rishuyas. He brings God down to his level, basically. So in other words, Ben Zoma is trying to transcend being a human being. Ben Az is trying to transcend being a human being, and that could work. And you'll just die, and you'll be in a state of Misas Nashika. And that's, I forgot which one died, Ben Zoma. And that's basically Misas Nashika.
So why does some go mad?
Huh?
Why does some go mad?
I don't know, because the body could resist dying, probably. Because at that moment where you're dying, either your body's going to start freaking out, which is, by the way, what happened to Bnei Yisrael Hasina. We'll get back to him. They didn't like this sensation. Yeah, this dying thing wasn't kishmak. Well, they want to come back, so maybe they were also protected. I don't know. But Moshe Rabbeinu, it's interesting, right? Were they protected? Let's see. Moshe Rabbeinu says, like, I'm doing this. I'm going over. And what did Hashem tell him, by the way? Lo yirani ha'adam v'choy. You want to go over, you can go over. The Rambam implies this also in what's it called? He said that very interesting thing, because the Rambam says Malachim, even Malachim don't know Hashem's essence. And the Rambam also says that a person who's what?
Doesn't
Well,
it
what?
say they don't know who Hisigas Hatzma?
Yes, meaning only Hashem knows it. What's your point?
Meaning they do have some greater understanding of Hakadosh Baruch Hu's essence.
No.
Still
So okay,
level
one second.
down from whatever.
Wait. Who has a better asaga? Malachim of Hashem or man after he dies? Okay, fair question. Who's Masik Hashem more, Malachim or man after he dies? So I think we can prove this. You know, the better one, I could use the other one better. Just careful about that. Yeah. Okay. All these tsuras have a hasaga, but even the highest one cannot be masig amitas haber kamashahu. Okay, even the highest malach cannot be masig amitas haber kama shehi. Fine. What did Moshe Rabbeinu ask Hashem? Bikish Moshe Rabbeinu to be masig amitas hamatzai kama shehi, which even the highest don't know. No, since you're connected to your guf, you can't be masig this.
Yeah, but what about the whole?
Mashma, that once you disconnect from your body.
And if Moshe's just in Zoma and he's not already.
Wait a second. Mashma, once you do right. Mashma, once you disconnect from your body, then you could. Okay, now that's either Rambam says only Hakadosh Baruch Hu is masig amitas atzmai. Okay, this is one of the places where the Rambam indicates, which says explicitly elsewhere, that a person unites with Hashem. I know we're not supposed to say that for Maimonides, but the Rambam says it. So, okay, he's alludes to this, whatever that means. What does that mean? Fine. Say that. That's one of the places. So 1 second. Where are we here? So Moshe Rabbeinu was told like this: you want to die. Everyone asks, by the way, what does Moshe Rabbeinu want? You can't be Masik Hashem. Everyone knows you can't be Masik Hashem. But the answer is, of course, you can be Masik Hashem. You could die. Moshe Rabbeinu is asking to die. He's asking to transcend Shleimus Anush. This means he's like, I don't need to be a body. So what's going to happen then? Had Moshe Rabbeinu's request been granted, let's see, it would have been mace. Mace. And who's going to cure for his body? Nobody. Same with everybody who's died. You put him in the ground. Right, okay. Hashem doesn't want that. Hashem wants him to live. Yeah? Hashem doesn't want him to die. So Mela, what does he do? What happens now? What was Moshe Rabbeinu's state now? Okay. In other words, we have a fifth guy, right? He said we have Ben Azzai, Ben Zoma, Akiva, Lishma Nafuya, and Moshe Rabbeinu. Akiva says, "I'm not even going to try. I'm not going to try to do something that's going to make me die." Moshe Rabbeinu says, "I'm going to try. Meaning, I'm willing to die." But he didn't die. So what was his state? So let's look at what was his state.
Can I just add to the question to make sure that
Yeah.
you're answering this as well, which is that whatever hasaga he gets at the end, is that a saga, right? When
I just think, what do you mean by he? That's my question. What do you mean by he? No, I know you meant Moshe. You meant Moshe the Gof, Moshe the Shal. Yeah, okay.
Oh, no, that's actually my question.
Yeah.
Whatever hasaga result, is that a human hasaga or a hasaga that transcends
very
human
good. Very good. That's what we're going to understand. So first, let's get a little bit of a flavor of what Moshe Rabbeinu's state was. Okay, this is in Gimel Nun Aleph, paragraph 19. This is where the Rambam's giving the training for how to limit your engagement with this world and maximize your engagement with Hashem. Avol she'adam yizke lahasig es ha'amitis v'lesmoich mashahusag v'hisig, that a person should be massing the truths. Paragraph number 19 in the Mechmah Torah, page 389, and be happy with his asaga. That he's involved with his bodily needs, while his mind is completely dedicated to Hashem. In other words, what the Rambam is describing is like this: that your mind is b'chlal not influenced in kiyuzeh from the fact that you're a body. He's with Hashem in his heart, by through people externally. So a person who's Isaac with his body, but in his mind he's in the presence of God. You know what Nigish Moshe Levada Hashem means? It means, says the Rambam, he was busy with people, and his mind was in front of Hashem. That's what Nigish Moshe Levada Hashem. You know when Moshe was Nigish Levada Hashem? He was sitting eating breakfast. That's when his Nigish. That's Rambam's description of Nigish Moshe Levada. He was building a house. He was doing his business, and that's Nigish Moshe Levada Hashem, because he was in the presence of Hashem. And then he quotes the next pasuk, "Vahisham im Hashem," and the Rambam, I think, left out the end of the pasuk because it'd be way too confusing for us, which says Lechem lo yachol u'mayim lashasa. But the Rambam is saying, you know what it means? Vahisham Hashem lechem lo yachol u'mayim lashasa. It means what I just described before. Oisik b'tzorchei gufay. The pasuk says Lechem lo yachol u'mayim lashasa. The answer is that Moshe was nichman b'kol yilud isha. Moshe Rabbeinu's seichel, because his seichel is separate from his body, therefore he is his seichel in a way, and not his body, because his body, unlike everyone else that we know, his body had no influence on his thoughts.
Except that it continues and says he's the same Gam Dargaz Ahavas.
Yeah, okay, so same thing.
So it's not Kol Yulad Isha. It's
Okay, that's interesting question. Interesting, right. Very interesting question.
But it also says there, Hasaga was at a lower level, right? Shmi Hashem Lo Yidateh. So
Right, no, but what's
whatever
the
state of mind they were in,
description
that didn't
covers
necessarily.
Right.
And he doubles down on it in
Yeah.
the next two paragraphs.
Right. But he's saying, if I'm equating this with the fact that Moshe was nichbim kol yilod isha because he didn't eat. So let's clarify exactly what I mean with this. Moshe Rabbeinu, the lowercase Moshe, the person, the body Moshe. The Rambam implies in this passage that he ate. Of course he ate, because if he wouldn't eat, then his body would disintegrate. It could have been a miracle, but miracles are not so interesting for the Rambam. This is much more interesting. That what? That it wasn't true that Moshe ate, because Moshe, the Gavra Moshe, was his mind. Like everyone is their mind, but everyone is their mind and with some influence of the body. If you could have a mind that's completely free from the influence of the body, then even though the body has to eat, you wouldn't say the person's eating, and that's what it means that Moshe didn't eat. Okay, so let's think about this now. What happened to Moshe Rabbeinu? He did cross over to Hashem. He died. In that sense, we say Moshe died. What do I mean to say he died? He did, in fact, sever the connection between mind and body. So as we said earlier, he wouldn't breathe. I don't know about breathing and what's it called? Automatic, parasympathetic nervous system, whatever. The things that the body does automatically, the breathing and the heartbeat. But he definitely wouldn't eat. At least he wouldn't think he should eat. I don't know. But he might feed himself, right? I mean, he might say, okay, I'm going to, even though my mind is b'chlal not there, nonetheless, I'm going to do it. Is that possible? Can that be squared? I don't know. But I think that has something to do with the protection. The Rambam, when he says protection, that's the protection. There's this new weird thing with Mitzias, that even though he was a neshama, nonetheless, he was able to survive. What? As a body.
How else do you explain our Ram Young or Ram Lyle?
Yeah.
It's not a regular existence.
Right.
So
No, I'm saying he ate.
Not
No.
upstairs.
Of course he did. No. See, in that paragraph, the Rambam says, you're standing in front of Hashem, and he quotes the pasuk, Vayishem Hashem, Lechem Lo Yechal Mayim Shasas. I'm telling you, what that means is, he didn't eat.
He didn't, right.
Because he was with Hashem. His body wasn't with Hashem. What does it mean his body wasn't with Hashem? A very specific thing. It means, unlike everyone else, his body and his bodily faculties had zero influence over his mind. So therefore his mind was with Hashem, which means he was with Hashem. He was with Hashem, meaning he, who was his mind, was in no way affected by matter, unlike everyone else that we know. Of us, notwithstanding.
So according to this, then why didn't Moshe get answered on the first request, like the Rambam talks about in Aleph Samach Daled, right? If he transcends his body,
Which request? Aleph Samach Daled.
right? He says he asks two questions. One is he says,
Aleph Nun Daled, you mean? Yeah.
Sorry, Aleph Nun Daled, excuse me.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the thing. No, so let me explain what I think.
Shouldn't he have gotten what he wanted?
Right. No. So let me tell you what I think happened. Moshe got what he wanted. Of course he got what he wanted. He's in the Neshama, he's in front of Hashem. But there's nothing to say about that. Zilch. You cannot. In other words, let me be very clear about what I think about this. Every intellectual perception that we're familiar with, let's say, can be transferred into words, can be talked about. Not that intellectual perception. Why? Because that intellectual perception is completely separate from everything familiar to everyone, because everything familiar to everyone else in the whole world is bodily or has some bodily component to it, or you. So then there is no conduit. There's no influence from that experience to the world of words.
Then why indicate that he did not
See?
receive an answer? Say that he got an answer.
No, you can't say that.
Say
That's
what
already
you said,
saying
which
words.
is that he got an answer, but
No.
there's no conduit to the physical world for us to express.
That's what Lo Yirani V'Adam B'Chai means. That's what Lo Yirani V'Adam B'Chai means. As a living being, which is where I want you to remain, because I'm not interested in you coming and dying, this is completely irrelevant. This path of yours is going to exist in a parallel universe, in the universe that Hashem is creating now. By V'Sakoisi Eskapi, he had to intervene and protect him and create this thing, this weird reality that even though Moshe Rabbeinu should be dead, meaning his body should disintegrate, nonetheless his body is going to continue miraculously surviving and miraculously eat and miraculously breathe, even though there's really no reason for it to do so. That's the miracle. And the point is that whatever Moshe is experiencing as the Neshama Moshe is so beyond words, and actually there's nothing to talk. Not that there's nothing to say about it, and it doesn't give rise to any conversation. In other words, Moshe, who was eating and drinking, and Moshe who was talking to people, had nothing to say about the Moshe who was Lefnei Hashem.
So the miracle, right, and the fact that he was a Maryam called Yolod is only necessary as it relates to what he taught us. What he comes back and tells us.
What do you mean?
Meaning the answer that he gets, the Yud Gimel Midos,
Yeah.
right, which I think the Rambam says in Abdallah is the response he gets to his request of Harinus Verchacha. So what you're saying now is to the extent Moshe transcends and gets a response, that's irrelevant to us.
Completely irrelevant. Right?
But why is Rambam telling us that for Hunigash, Hamar Mikal Yolo?
Ah.
Why is he telling us things? Because there was a message he got.
So let's talk about that. So what's a connection between what Moshe actually experienced internally as Moshe and the koil, or what came to us, okay?
Right, whatever we have as a result of that.
Right. So now here's what my understanding of the koil, and this is why I think it's called panim b'panim, because there's no causative conduit, natural conduit. In other words, I see something, I know something. Let's say I figure something out. I figure out an algebraic, some formula in algebra. Okay, so that's an intellectual saga, but that's an intellectual saga that I could then share. That means to say there's a causative chain that from my hasaga I could be inspired to talk about it and the words for it, and there's a reason for me to say it. Moshe's hasaga has nothing to do with this world. There's zero to say about it. Same way Hashem is nivdal legamri, and everything about Hashem is a lashon meshutev. So Moshe comes back and starts talking lashon meshutev. What's it going to do for us? Nothing. Meaning, right? It does nothing for us. So what happens then? Hashem says, "I'm keeping you in this world, and what am I going to do? I'm going to create a koil." And the koil is going to be that which parallels, let's say, closely parallels, mirrors the experience of Moshe, who is in the presence of Hashem, dead, as close as possible, in the world, in the field and domain of words and bodies. Words and bodies I'm putting together, because the words we know are all related to bodily things, which is the whole theme of the Moreh Nevuchim. So the reason why the koil is called panim b'panim, I see like this. Here's what I'm saying. Panim b'panim means no intermediary role. Basically dead. That's what Moshe was. And you know what happens when a person achieves that level of panim b'panim? When Moshe did it, and when we did it, we'll get to us soon, but whenever that happens, that generates a koil. The koil is called panim b'panim because the koil is that which reflects, as close as possible, the truth of panim b'panim. So there's no causative pathway between the experience of panim b'panim and words. Instead, there has to be this new creation. Let's go. But for now, I'll just say it's exeris hakasav that Hashem does this. Whenever anyone does panim b'panim, Hashem generates. Same way Hashem said Yehi Or. So whenever a person fuses with Hashem, that generates this koil that says Bereshis Tolei Kol Yisrael, or Hashem Karach Muchan, or whatever, depending on what needs to be said. Did I answer your question now about Hashem?
Yeah.
Okay. So now.
Well, that explains why Yatz and Nishmasim are shown.
Oh, that's Yatz and Nishmasim. But the difference in us and them and Moshe is like this: is that we
still want to be alive.
Yes, we're like, no, we're not doing that again. So what happens when we say we're not doing it again? Here's what I think. The Rambam connects the Hasaga to the Koil. Let's talk about it from that perspective. What was the connection between the Hasaga and the Koil? The answer is the Hasaga was the Hasaga of, for he says, Panai, Anochi and Loyilachon, the great Clarkite, but with a big difference, which is that our Hasaga of that made us realize, wait a second, we're going to die. We're not interested. Okay? And the Rambam says they're massacred from the Koil. What I think that means is that this connection between the Hasaga and the Koil was experienced by Klal Yisrael as well, as it says panim b'panim. The connection is, again, that when you have this kind of panim b'panim, which means, where he says panai, fusing, dying and becoming one with Hashem, or being masik Hashem k'fi mashehi, then concomitant with that, or parallel with that, there's a koil that says Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Okay, Azzai does. How does that work? So first of all, we don't know. Because you know what? Because we came to that and ran away from it. Moshe Rabbeinu engaged with it, said, I'm willing to do that constantly. So Moshe Rabbeinu knows how it works. Furthermore, I think they've answered the Babanel's question of how did Moshe hear and we didn't hear. Because since Moshe is not running away from that causative, reality of the hasaga of panim b'panim generates a koil. Moshe is living with that, engaging with that, so he knows the language, he knows the method of the generation of the koil, therefore he knows the meaning of the koil. So Pashat, the koil were not the regular words Anochi Hashem Elokecha. The koil was mechvesim, something like that. Now Moshe Rabbeinu, who knows what's going on because I'm with this. I'm doing this. I'm happy to do this. So he knows what's going on, so he knows the language that the koil speaks. We, who as soon as we had this experience, we said we're not doing this anymore, therefore we don't know the nature of that koil, therefore we don't know the content of that koil. That's the difference between us and Moshe. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up, and this is Mishuna Dig Deep. I want to wrap it up with one amazing diak in Yesodei Torah. Actually, yeah, in Yesodei Torah. The Rambam says like this, and then we could, I guess, next time we could just let this sit for a week and see what happens. And I just want to get back to the questions to make sure I answered all the questions, and I'll talk about the end of the parak also. But let me say one diak in Yesodei Torah, then I'll make sure just to address all the points we raised and make sure how I'm answering them all. The Rambam says in Yesodei Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu stayed with Hashem. The difference between Moshe and everyone else is that Moshe is Oimid Kemalachi Asharis. Okay, Hashem promised him this by telling him, "Lech emor lahem shuvu lachem la'alechem, v'atapoya moidi madi." Go back to alechem is tzorchi haguf, and you are imadi. Nikshur daite b'tzur ha'olam. Okay, and he's like a malach. Vav. Perek Zayin halacha vav. In Perek Ches halacha aleph, where the Rambam talks about what Klal Yisrael heard, right? What did they heard? Everyone knows what they heard? They heard Hashem telling Moshe, lech emor lahem, kach v'kach. So notice it's lech emor lahem. The pasuk says lech emor lahem, shuvu lechem la'alechem. And what did we hear that Hashem told Moshe? Moshe, lech emor lahem, kach v'kach. So now, plugging this into the Moreh Nevuchim, what did we hear in this koil? L'maisa, all we heard was, the only thing we were left with from the koil is that we're not going to engage with the koil. Because we heard this koil, because we were panim upon him, and we said, we're not going to do this. So, but that same koil was, Moshe was engaging with the koil, with the panim upon him at the same time we were, and Moshe was engaging with the koil, and we were disengaging with the koil, which is the message of Lech Emor Lahem, Shuvu Lechem La'alechem. So Rambam says that we heard Hashem telling Moshe, Lech Emor Lahem Kach V'Kach, because the one experience that we shared with Moshe was that we experienced Lech Emor Lahem Shuvu Lechem La'alechem. We want to engage with Tzorchi Haguf. We're not willing to die like Moshe is willing to die. So to wrap it all up, so Klal Yisrael had experienced panim upon him, and Moshe had experienced panim upon him. We know only Moshe's panim upon him, not everyone else. The answer is like this. The answer is that our panim upon him became speaking from Min Kadam Hashem. Why? Because although at the moment of the experience of panim upon him, it was a panim upon him, but since we weren't willing to engage with it, so therefore we lost the understanding of even how the koil comes from Hashem, as Rambam says in Chelek, and as Rambam says at the end of this parak. We lost the understanding of how the koil comes from Hashem. So therefore, since we didn't even understand the mechanism of how the koil comes from Hashem, we couldn't even understand the content of the koil. But the way we got to this koil was because there was asag of Anochi and Lo Yelecha, and therefore we're like Moshe in the way we got there. But what remains afterwards is where we split. Afterwards, we hear Lech Emor Lahem Shuvu Lechem La'alechem, and Moshe Rabbeinu hears the content of the koil, the words of the koil. So it is, and it isn't panim upon him. It is panim upon him if you look at it from within, but if you look at it from our looking back on it, for us it's speaking from the presence of Hashem because we're not understanding, we're not willing to remain there. We reject the panim upon him. Right, exactly.
Oversimplification of it is panim upon him for Moshe is both parties want to be there.
Yeah.
Panim upon him for us was
Yeah.
Hashem's
an invitation.
goes, I'm here.
Right.
We're like, yeah, we're out.
Right, you could say that. And I want to end with this last point. So I think we answered all the questions here, and you can go back to the parak and see how. I just want to end with one thing, which is, maybe we'll get to this next time. We have a lot of other things to think about. That I showed you how the message to Moshe, Lech Emor Lahem Kach V'Kach, is really Lech Emor Lechem Shuvu Lechem La'alechem, which suggests then that the whole Torah is be'etzem Lech Emor Lechem Shuvu Lechem La'alechem. Like the Rambam's putting it together. So this is something I want to, maybe we'll get to, that the function of the Torah as Torah is bringing us back to this world. Okay, that's a cryptic statement. We'll just throw it out there. Okay, we'll leave it at that.